2 studies that are in our back office. So you can go ahead and read through these studies at your leisure. You simply go to the back office, go to the resource section, and you'll see our studies there. So this first one is in the X39 section. Now, we've got now over a dozen studies that we've done on X39. We've done blood tests, urine tests, bioelectrical tests. This was an early study that we did, and it came as a result of looking at the initial urine data that we did on X39. So first, there were the blood tests. We would apply X39 and find out that it does elevate copper peptide to statistical significance. And you can see some of those studies in the back office. Then we did a urine study to look at the metabolism. So the question is, if we're elevating copper peptide, what are some of those benefits? And one of the benefits that we saw was that X39 was elevating GABA. Now, GABA is one of the key nutrients in the brain as associated with cognition. It promotes a sense of relaxation. We'll talk about that in a moment, and we'll answer the question, if X39 is designed to produce the health and vitality of the body, if we know that copper peptide improves the activity of stem cells in the body, what does that have to do with GABA in the brain? We're going to answer that question. So we wanted to see, all right, exactly what's happening in the brain. And we worked with Dr. Gaetan Chevalier, who spoke at one of our conferences back in 2019, 2020 on X39. And he did this study with a P3 system looking at what happens in the human brain. So we did these scans. Now, session 1 is baseline. So this means this is what the scan looked like at the very beginning. You'll see in this participant, a 77-year-old woman. Now, what's significant about this is that we know as people get over the age of 60, the stem cell activity in the brain begins to decline. And by the age of 75, cells stop dividing. So we wouldn't expect to see a dramatic change in these readings in someone that is 77. And what Dr. Chevalier had said to me at the time was that to see the shifts of this magnitude could take 9, 10, 12 months. Now, what we want to see is brain coherence. So you can think of, in simplistic terms, these red zones in session 1 at baseline before any patch is applied. Those are areas of disharmony. Session 2 is 3 weeks after X39, and session 3 is 6 weeks after X39. So essentially, what's happening is the brain is going into a state of coherence over this 3 to 6 week period of time. So the practical outcome of that is that use of X39 is going to help produce a relaxation response and also produce an improvement in cognition. You can go through the study yourself, and you can see these additional scans. We're not going to do it now. You can see in this woman, age 67, the brain was in terrible state where the different regions of the brain are not in coherence relative to bioelectrical signaling. And you could see that she made a dramatic improvement after 3 weeks and an even more dramatic improvement after 6 weeks. So another benefit of this is if you have people using X39 for a week, such as this woman that's 67, after a week, she may not notice that there's been a very big shift. After 3 weeks, she'll say, yeah, I'm starting to feel a little bit better. And then after 6 weeks, there's a dramatic change. So this is why it's very important that people use the product for at least a month and preferably 2 or 3 months to see some of these dramatic improvements. Okay, now let's take a look at the carnosine patch. So this was a study that was done by Dr. Tom and Helen Budzinski. And Dr. Tom Budzinski, extremely well known in the literature for his work in biofeedback. There's even college textbooks that he's written on this subject, highly respected. So we had the privilege of working with Dr. Budzinski on a number of products like Eon and Carnosine. And he had a particular interest in cognition, as well as he had been looking doing research through his career on various treatments for Parkinson's disease. So it was absolute pleasure to get the opportunity to speak with him about these approaches. So basically, the objective was, if we took a group of people that are over the age of 60 and they were using the carnosine patch, would we expect to see an improvement in cognition? Would their memory improve, short-term, long-term memory? Would the speed of processing improve? These are some of the measures that we wanted to look at, because there was literature that would show that the use of carnosine supplements would in fact improve cognition. So this would be a good measure to see whether or not the carnosine patch was working in a similar manner to carnosine supplements. So in this study, again, this is in the back office. You can read through this if you like and look at the data, or you can just skip down to the bottom here like we're going to do. Carnosine patches definitively have shown their worth in this study by those in the treatment group achieving significant improvement in cognitive functioning. The microcog gives information and asks for feedback, in the meantime measuring speed, reaction time, accuracy, and memory. The test is useful because we were able to probe for more in-depth proficiency and processing. The test showed us that the more complex thought processes were most effectively improved. And that would mean that the carnosine patch, this is another conclusion reached in the study, the carnosine patch acts to reduce the stress elements of the heartbeat. And we had shown in other studies that the carnosine patch improves the electrical response of the organs in the body. And this makes sense because as an antioxidant, carnosine is found rather selectively in the brain, in the eyes, in the heart, and in the muscle. So we expect there to be an anti-inflammatory effect, an anti-glycation effect with carnosine. So this shows, in fact, that after 30 days of use of carnosine, we get a statistically significant improvement in people over the age of 60. So there could be, we haven't tested this, but there could be then, since they're different mechanisms, a synergistic effect in using X39 and carnosine together. Okay, let's get to number of studies here. Now, this one I just happened to pull up. This came through the news yesterday. And interestingly, this is a link between cognition, dementia, and mitochondrial function. So what's important about this is that now it's showing what we've been talking about all along, that our health, our overall health in a variety of ways is intimately connected to mitochondrial function. And the really good thing about that is that there are a whole variety of ways of improving mitochondrial function. We've talked about some of those things in the past relative to the use of our products, and we're absolutely not making any claims that we're treating any kind of disease. There are nutrients like acetyl L-carnitine and alpha-lipoic acid that will upregulate mitochondrial function. Our X2O product, which is now coming out this week, using the light-infused water we can upregulate mitochondrial function for improvement in health and wellness. So this is a very significant study because what this means is that if we have a clean, healthy diet, we provide our bodies with the nutrients that we need. We exercise regularly, drink clean water, supplement where necessary, so we can maintain the health of our mitochondria, get proper sleep. We potentially can prevent all different types of chronic disease. So that's wonderful information. And again, we never claim that any of our products treats or prevents disease. So we probably want to know, what is cognition in the first place? And here's a website that has a very nice definition. But essentially, one way that we can think about this is very first sentence here. It's a range of mental processes relating to the acquisition, storage, manipulation, and retrieval of information. So we're simply talking about our ability to store information and recall information. And apologies for the noise in the background. Okay, so let's look at X39 and let's look at what X39 does. It's designed to elevate the peptide GHK and GHK-Cu. So being very clear, this is a study that has been used on absorbing copper peptide through olfaction, through breathing it in. This is not a LifeWave study that we've done. And another important thing to note is that this has been done on aging mice. So very, very common in the literature is that when we see studies that work in mice or other animals, they don't necessarily translate over to human beings. Reason why mice are used in studies is because their immune system, for example, closely mimics the immune system of human beings. So you can take this as a data point, as a potential indicator. But what's important here is results showed that mice treated with intranasal copper peptide had an enhanced level of cognitive performance. Now, this just happens to be consistent with the studies that we've done on X39. Okay, so one of the things that we found in our studies that I mentioned before was that X39 we found in the urine studies was elevating GABA. And that was incredibly exciting because it provided an indication, a clue, that GABA, of what the method of action was, is improving cognition. So first of all, GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. Now, at first, that may sound like a bad thing, but GABA is going to balance out glutamic acid or glutamate. And this is important because GABA is able to put the brain into a state of relaxation. And it's one of the critical neurotransmitters in the brain. And again, if we wanted to look at what are some of the benefits of GABA, people use it to improve the quality of sleep. So if you're having a problem sleeping, you could take GABA potentially, reduces stress and anxiety. Of course, we have products if you're suffering with stress and anxiety. We have the Eon patch. And if your stress is interfering with the quality of sleep, that's one of the things. You could use the Eon patch at night as opposed to having to take a GABA supplement. Of course, many people find that because X39 improves their levels of GABA, that when they start using X39, their sleep improves. So now you know why. Okay, now a question would be, what does this have to do with stem cells? What does this have to do with the other functions that we see with X39? Well, this will underscore just how important GABA is. Breakthrough study reveals new insights into GABA, the brain's key signaling molecule. So if we take into consideration everything that our human brain will do. We look at the pineal gland, which effectively is a receptacle for biophotons coming through the eyes. And we get neurohormone precursors that are released by the pineal gland to direct the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus is going to control the temperature of the body. It's going to control our immune response, hormone production. So neurotransmitters like GABA, like acetylcholine, play a pivotal role in allowing the brain to do what it does. So when we're looking at X39 influencing levels of GABA in the brain, this should not be underestimated as to the power of this one single molecule. Now, we were looking at improving the levels of GABA is one thing, but when we look at those scans that Dr. Chevalier did, and we see these dramatic improvements over a period of as little as 3 weeks, we would form a hypothesis and say this should have something to do with stem cell activity. Stem cells have to be involved in tissue repair. And we're seeing this tissue repair on a massive level. So the question then is, how is X39 improving the health and wellness of the brain in such a short period of time? So we do the blood studies. We see that X39 improves the levels of GABA, and GABA has an intimate relationship with brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. And BDNF, as it turns out, is a signaling molecule for stem cells. And here is a study on the relationship between BDNF and GABA. And as we go to this next study, BDNF increases cell number of neural progenitor cells derived from human-induced pluripotent stem cells. So now we close the loop on this activity. So now we can see that you use X39. It's designed to elevate copper peptide. This supports healthy levels of GABA, improves the quality of sleep, improves cognition, and that in turn supports healthy levels of BDNF, which is helping to maintain the level of stem cell activity in the body. So this is important because at the start of all this, we're using light, completely non-toxic, no side effects, works with the body's natural communication system to improve our health and wellness. Okay. Now, another important thing that's worth talking about briefly is the connection between copper peptide, oxidative stress, and inflammatory stress. So we know the brain is mostly fats, and this is important because fats are highly susceptible to oxidation. And as we age, we want to be able to manage our oxidative and inflammatory stress so that we can maintain our cognition throughout our entire life. When we look at species that don't age, the same recurring theme shows up, is that in all these species, we could be talking about mollusks, whales, lobsters, hydractinia. They have complete control over oxidative and inflammatory stress. There was a clam that was found to be over 500 years old, no signs of inflammation or oxidative stress. Lobsters, there was a lobster found to be 140 years old, and again, no inflammatory or oxidative stress. The muscle in the lobster, the meat of the lobster, was the same as a young, healthy lobster. So we know that we need to have mastery over our oxidative inflammatory stress if we're going to slow down, stop, reverse aging. And in this case, we want to preserve the ability of our brain to process information, preserve our memory. And copper peptide is one tool that we can use to do that. So here's a study. that you can see at your leisure on the role of copper peptide in preventing oxidative stress and degenerative conditions of aging. And this, of course, was done by Dr. Lauren Picard, the scientist that discovered copper peptide. I hope he wins a Nobel Prize. He certainly deserves it. All right, we've talked a lot about copper peptide, so let's go now and talk about carnosine. So carnosine, of course, we have our carnosine patch, and be worth noting in Celergise, we have nutrients that support the formation of copper peptide and support the formation of carnosine. So when you see beta-alanine in Celergise, the beta-alanine is there, so you get the raw materials that you need to make carnosine. So we looked at one of our studies on the use of the carnosine patch to improve cognition. Now here's a study that was done as recently as 2021. Carnosine improves aging-induced cognitive impairment and brain regional neurodegeneration. Now, we are not, again, suggesting that any of our products prevent, treat, or cure disease. That would be irresponsible. We do not do those studies. So it's worth it to go into the literature and look at how are natural ingredients like carnosine, how are these natural antioxidants being used to help improve our health. So this is really a great example. Carnosine supplementation improves cognitive outcomes in younger participants. Now, often when we think of a decline in cognition, we're thinking of maybe people over the age of 40, 50, 60. And there are many tools that we have at our disposal, such as eating a clean, healthy diet, proper rest, proper sleep, so totally important, exercise. All of these things are going to play a role in our mental health and well-being, in our cognition. So what was interesting about this study in particular, is that could people in their teens or 20s benefit from carnosine other than some of its known use in improving athletic performance? And the answer is yes. Carnosine can, in fact, help younger people improve cognition. There's probably some exciting research to be done. As a matter of fact, if we took people in their 20s and had them use carnosine throughout their life, would there be a decrease in conditions like Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, other neurodegenerative conditions? That would be a fantastic study. Okay, therapeutic potential of carnosine supplementation against cognitive decline. And again, the conclusion of this study is yes, there is a connection here. I want to keep things moving so we can get to some of the fun stuff. Okay, I think you're probably getting the idea here. Carnosine improves cognitive impairment. The impact of carnosine on biological aging. So I wanted to throw this one up here. We are talking about cognition today. We're talking about brain health. But of course, we talk very frequently about the anti-aging effects of copper peptide, that it resets thousands of genes, about 4,000 genes, to a more youthful state. Carnosine should not be underestimated. One of its effects is that it protects the telomeres. So the telomeres, of course, are the rods on the end of chromosomes that control the number of times our cells divide. Carnosine protects those telomeres. In some animal studies with mice and rats, it's been shown that carnosine can improve their lifespan by 30 to 40%. So this is to say, we get the short-term benefits with nutrients like copper peptide and carnosine in improving our overall health and our cognition, but there are many long-term benefits. So this article here talking about the long-term benefits of carnosine relative to aging.